All right, this is going to be 1 point for part 1 notes. We're going to be solving quadratic equations. Quadratic equations are x squared functions. When we have an x squared and an x and a number, we have to solve by factoring. So before we could factor, looking at example 1, we want it to be equal to 0. So the first thing you always want to check for is to make sure it's equal to 0. What would we have to do first here to make this equal to 0? Ava. Awesome. Let's move 24 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 24. So we have x squared plus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0. Now that it's equal to 0, we can factor. So this one, let's factor it normally. What are two factors of negative 24 that add to 5? Awesome. 8 and negative 3. So this would factor into x plus 8 and x minus 3. Now we're not just factoring here. It says to solve. We got to solve, find the solutions. So we want to set them each equal to 0 after we solve. Awesome. So we have x plus 8 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. When you solve each little equation, we're going to subtract 8 on both sides. So x equals negative 8. And then we add 3 to both sides in our other little equations. We get x is equal to 3. So these are our two answers here. Looking at A in example 2, do we have two factors of 13 that add to negative 8? No, we don't. So for questions like this, we have to talk about another strategy that we're going to use to solve. This one, it says to solve by completing the square. We're actually going to complete the square tomorrow in part 2. So this is going to be part 2 notes. We complete the square. So we're going to save this slide for tomorrow. So for 1.4 part 2, we're going to be doing the completing the square questions. So the two that we skipped from yesterday. So this is A. I just rewrote it on the side here so we have more space. So first thing we want to do when completing the square is we want to move the constant to the other side. So I want just my x's on one side, the number on the other, which is a little bit different than what we do for every other question because when we solve, we want it to be equal to 0. But for completing the square, we don't want it to be equal to 0. So I have x squared minus 8x. I'm going to leave a space here to complete the square, and I'm going to subtract 13 to move it to the other side, so minus 13. So we want our x's on one side. We're going to leave a space to complete the square, and then it's going to equal the number. When we complete the square, so in that space, I've got this little formula, which is going to be b over 2 squared. Our b is what's in front of the x term. So b is going to be negative 8. So we have negative 8 over 2 squared. So our little formula, b over 2 squared, is what's going to go in the spot to complete the square. Now, what is negative 8 over 2? So negative 4 squared. I just simplified the inside. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Oh. Now, inside of our parentheses, we're going to put the two things that are squared here. So I've got x that's squared and negative 4 that's squared. So these two are going to go inside of our parentheses. So x minus 4, it's parentheses squared. Yeah. So now I just made this negative 4 squared. I pulled it out of nowhere and put it on the left side of my equation. I have to keep my equation balanced, so I need to make sure I put this on the right side too. What is negative 4 squared?
4 squared is 16.
16. So I'm adding 16 on the left side. I need to add 16 on the right side too. So we have to keep the equation balanced. Whatever you put in that spot to complete the square, you also have to add it to the other side. Then we can add the two things on the right side together. What's negative 13 plus 16?
3.
3.
That's the answer.
We completed the square, but this isn't our answer. We haven't solved all the way yet. We still got to get x equals.
Why did you use the square root?
Because I pulled this, like I put this into our equation on the left side. I also have to add it to the right side too to keep my equation balanced. Awesome. We want to get rid of the parentheses. I want to solve for x, so I need to get x all by itself. To get rid of those parentheses squared, we're going to square root both sides. So the square root will cancel out with the squared, and we're left with x minus 4. And then that equals, what happens when we take the square root of both sides? What do we need to put?
Plus or minus?
Plus or minus. Can I simplify the square root of 3? No, so plus or minus square root 3. Can't do anything with that. We're just going to leave it. And then we're going to add the 4. Can I combine the 4 to square root 3? No. When you can't combine them together, you just want to leave them separate. So we have x equals 4 plus or minus square root 3. So this is our answer. Now remember on WebAssign, it's going to want you to separate them as 4 minus square root 3, comma 4 plus square root 3. But on the test or quiz, 4 plus or minus square root 3 is perfectly fine. This is how WebAssign is going to want it. All right, let's do the same thing with b. Let's complete the square. Before we complete the square here, what's the first thing we always want to ask ourselves? Is there GCF? Is there GCF here? Yeah. What's our GCF?
3.
So I can divide everything by 3. Let's get rid of that 3. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 2 equals 0. Cole, what should we do first? Subtract the 2. When completing the square, we want to get the x's on one side. So we have x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a space to complete the square, and it equals negative 2. What's the little formula we use to complete the square? B over 2 squared. What's our b? Negative 4. So we have negative 4 over 2 squared. What does negative 4 over 2 simplify to? Negative 2 squared. Now in my parentheses squared, I'm going to take whatever's squared here, so it's always going to be x, and the number that's squared. So these two are going to go into our parentheses squared. So we have x minus 2. Now we need to make sure we keep our equation balanced. What is negative 2 squared?
4.
So I'm adding 4 on the left side here because I pulled this out of nowhere. I put it into my equation just randomly. What else do I have to do? Add 4 to the other side too. So you got to add that to both sides. We're going to add it with the negative 2, which would give us 2. Perfect. So we completed the square. We did the hard part. What should we do next? Square root both sides. Perfect. So it'll cancel out with the squared. So we're left with x minus 2 is equal to what? Plus or minus square root 2. Perfect. Anytime you take the square root of both sides, you need the plus or minus. What do we do next? Add 2. Can I combine 2 and square root 2? No. So we have x equals 2 plus or minus square root 2. So this is our answer. So we have p squared plus 14p minus 38. What's the first thing we should do to complete the square? Add 38. We want to move the number to the other side. So then we have p squared plus 14p. I'm going to leave a space to complete the square, and it equals 38. What should we do next? Awesome. B over 2 squared. Our b is 14, so we have 14 over 2 squared. What's 14 over 2 simplify to? 7 squared. So what's going to go into my parentheses here? P plus 7. Perfect. It's p here, but if you wanted to say x, that's fine too. What do we do next? Awesome. 7 squared is 49. So I'm adding 49 on the left side. I also have to add 49 to the right side. So we're going to add these two together. What's 38 plus 49?
87.
87. Awesome. So we completed the square. We did the hard part. Next, we have to solve. What would we do to solve? Square root both sides. So it'll cancel out with the squared. So p plus 7 is equal to what? Plus or minus square root 87. Let's double check to make sure we can't simplify the square root of 87. What are 2 factors of 87? 3 and 29. Do we have 2 factors of 29? No, so it doesn't simplify. What should we do next? Subtract 7. Can I combine 7 and the square root of 87? No. So we have p equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 87. So we have v squared plus 6v minus 59 equals 0. So first thing we want to do is add 59 to both sides. Perfect. So we have v squared plus 6v. I'm going to leave a space to complete the square, and it equals 59. Perfect. The little formula we use is b over 2 squared, and our b is 6. So we have 6 over 2 squared. Perfect. 3 squared. What's going to go into our parentheses squared? Awesome. The v and the 3. And since it's a positive 3, we put v plus 3 squared. All right, Cole, what do we do next? Add 9. 3 squared is 9, so we're technically adding 9 on the left side. What else do we have to do? Add it on the right side. So 59 plus 9 would be what? 68. What should we do next? We can square root both sides to solve for v. So we have v plus 3 is equal to what? Plus or minus the square root of 68. Let's see if we can simplify the square root of 68. But either way, it's going to be plus or minus. It's always going to be plus or minus when you take the square root of both sides. What are 2 factors of 68? 34 and 2. Yeah, that works. What are 2 factors of 34? 17 and 2. Do we have 2 factors of 17? No, but do we have any pairs? We have a pair of 2s. So what's going to come to the outside? 2. What stays on the inside? 17. Awesome. Anything you circle comes to the outside. Whatever doesn't get circled stays on the inside. What's the last step? Subtract 3. So it cancels here. We have v equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 square root 17. Can I combine the 3 with the 2 square root 17? No, they're not like terms. 2 has a square root attached to it, so you can't combine them together. Another strategy we could use to solve when something doesn't factor is our quadratic formula. You could always use the quadratic formula even if something does factor, but you really don't want to use it when it does factor just because it's not as easy. But if something does not factor, you want to use the quadratic formula. So our quadratic formula gives us our x values, so it tells us what x is equal to, just like the first question we did when we factor, we found what x is equal to. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. On WebAssign, the first question asks for the quadratic formula, but you can't put the plus or minus sign on WebAssign, so it wants you to split it up. It wants you to put negative b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. It says to enter your answer as a comma separated list, so comma negative b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So this is how WebAssign wants you to answer the first question, where it just asks for the quadratic formula. You just have to split it up. But in this class, on a test or quiz, saying plus or minus is perfectly fine. You could just leave it as plus or minus. WebAssign doesn't have a plus or minus button, so you got to split it. So in example 3, we want to find all the real solutions using the quadratic formula. So I'll rewrite our quadratic formula up here for us. We have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So for question A, what's our A? 3, what's B? Negative 5, and C? Negative 1. So A is the coefficient in front of the x squared, B is going to be the coefficient in front of the x, and C is your constant. So let's plug this into our quadratic formula. So we have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that would be negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. So 2 times 3. From here, we simplify. Negative 5 would turn into what? Positive 5. So positive 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared is positive 25. Minus 4 times 3. So negative 4 times 3 is what? Negative 12 times negative 1. Positive 12. So this would be plus 12 over 2 times 3, which is 6. And our last step, let's add. So we have 5 plus or minus the square root of 37 over 6. Always, always, always check to see if you can simplify your radical. Can I simplify the square root of 37? No, we don't have any factors of 37, so it can't be simplified. So this is our answer. So x would equal this. All right, next let's do b. So for b, what's our a? 4, what's b? 12, and c? 9. So when we plug it in, we have negative b, so negative 12, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 12 squared, minus 4 times a times c, so 4 times 4 times 9, over 2a, so 2 times 4. So let's simplify. So we have negative 12 plus or minus the square root of, what's 12 squared? 144. Then here we have negative 4 times 4 would be negative 16. And negative 16 times 9, let's work it out. 6 times 9 is what? 54. And 9 times 1 would be 9. Plus 5 would be 14. So this would be minus 144. Over 2 times 4, which is 8. Now we can simplify a little bit more. We have negative 12 plus or minus, what's 144 minus 144? 0. So we have the square root of 0. What is the square root of 0? 0. Perfect. This would just be 0. So this just goes away. Because if I were to add or subtract 0, we get the same thing. So this would be negative 12 over 8. Can we simplify negative 12 over 8? What does it simplify to? We can divide the top and the bottom by 4. So what do we get? Negative 3 over 2. So this would be our answer. So sometimes it simplifies all the way where you don't even have your radical in your answer anymore. Last one, let's do C. For C, what's our A? 1. Awesome. When there is no coefficient written in front, our A or number would be 1. B is 2, and what's C? 2. So negative B would be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4, no, the square root of B squared, so 2 squared, minus 4 times A times C, so 4 times 1 times 2, over 2 times A, so 2 times 1. So let's simplify. We get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, what's 2 squared? 4. Minus negative 4 times 1 would be negative 4, and negative 4 times 2? Negative 8, so minus 8 over 2 times 1, which is 2. Then we can subtract. We get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, what's 4 minus 8? Negative 4 over 2. Now what happens if we get a negative under our radical? It would be imaginary. This is imaginary. Do you think if we have an imaginary answer that would be a real solution? No. So this would be no real solution. If you have a negative under your square root, after you subtract, so if you're left with a negative under the square root, your answer would be no real solution. WebAssign will tell you what exactly to write in. It'll have it in the directions. So it'll say, like, if there is no real solution, type in. It's either no solution or no real solution, but just make sure you read the directions for the homework. Next page talks about the discriminant. The discriminant tells us how many solutions we're going to have. So the formula for our discriminant is what's under the square root. So this b squared minus 4ac looks familiar. It comes from what's under our square root in the quadratic formula. So we're just looking at this little part of the formula to give us our discriminant. If the discriminant is positive, so if it's greater than 0, meaning that it's positive, then our equation has 2 real solutions. If our discriminant is equal to 0, then our equation has 1 real solution. And if our discriminant is negative, so if it's less than 0, meaning that it's negative, then our equation has no real solution. So just like in the last question we did in C, where we had a negative under the square root, that b squared minus 4ac gave us a negative number, so we had no real solution. So this just tells us how many solutions we're going to have. It doesn't give us the answer, just tells us how many solutions. So for example 4, it says use the discriminant to determine how many real solutions each equation has. So our discriminant formula is b squared minus 4ac. So in A, what's our A? 1 would be A. What's our B? 4. And C? Negative 1. So let's plug that in. We have 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1. So 4 squared would be 16. Negative 4 times 1 would be negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 1? Positive 4, so plus 4. And 16 plus 4 would be 20. So our discriminant is 20. It's not our answer, it's just the discriminant. The discriminant tells us how many solutions we have. So how many solutions are we going to have if our discriminant is 20? We have 2 real solutions. If our discriminant is a positive number, we have 2 real solutions. So again, just a reminder, if our discriminant is positive, we have 2 real solutions. If our discriminant is 0, we have 1 real solution. And if our discriminant is negative, we have no real solution. So the discriminant just tells us how many answers we're going to have. Let's do B. So for B, what's our A? 4. What's our B? Negative 12. And C? 9. So when we put this into our formula, we have negative 12 squared. So B squared minus 4AC. So 4 times 4 times 9. What's negative 12 squared? 144. Then we have negative 4 times 4, which would be what? And negative 16 times 9? 144. We just did that before. But if you don't remember, write it out. Do 16 times 9. Write it out. So minus 144. What's 144 minus 144? 0. What do we know if our determinant is 0? We have one real solution. Any questions here? Lastly, let's do C. So what's our A? What's our B? And C? 4. Perfect. So we have B squared minus 4AC. So negative 2 squared minus 4 times A times C. So times 1/3 times 4. So negative 2 squared is what? 4. Then we have, here I'll do 4 times 4 first, which would be 16. So negative 16 times 1/3 is what? Negative 16 times 1/3. Awesome. Negative 16 over 3. Now we need to subtract. What do we do to subtract when we have fractions? We need a common denominator. So I can make this 4 over 1. What would our common denominator be? 3. So multiply the top and the bottom by 3. We get 12 over 3. So then we just subtract the numerators. What's 12 minus 16? Negative 4 over 3. So if our discriminant is negative, what does that tell us about our answer? No real solutions. Awesome.